You are listening to another episode of the Coaster101 podcast. I'm Andrew Stillwell in North Carolina, and we are still inching ever so closely to the regional park theme park season. And right now, as such, we are in the middle of our off-season interview series where we've interviewed people in the industry, fans of the industry, anybody really who has got an interesting story, so you guys don't have to listen to us just talk to each other for an hour, because who wants to do that? But this week on the show, we are actually joined by one of the earliest, what I will call friends of the podcast, because they are the creative minds behind our theme music. And when I reached out to them back in May or June, whenever we started this whole thing, I said, hey, you guys, would you want to create a theme song? And they had something to me literally within like an hour. On the show this week, I would like to welcome Justin Mabry and Clay Bradshaw of JM Music Design. Justin and Clay, how's it going?
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having us, Andrew. Appreciate
Absolutely. Absolutely. Justin, you fall into that kind of weird internet friendship where our paths have crossed on social media several times and never actually met in person. So we do have kind of a 2021 version of a face-to-face here on
yes.
Zencastr Today. And Clay, and you and I have actually never met, but I've admired your work from afar from a while. So I'm really glad we're getting the time to chat today.
Yeah, me too. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely, Andrew. Yeah, it always seems to be as I'm leaving, you're coming in, or the weekend after that, you visit the park that we've just been at or something like that. It just hasn't worked out yet, but we're so happy to be here today and get a chance to meet with you.
Absolutely. So I guess my early question, you create music for themed entertainment and similar experiences. So, the themed, not necessarily just theme parks, but the themed entertainment space. So I guess my first question, and Justin, I'll start with you, is,
Sure.
What is your background as it relates to themed entertainment? How did you kind of get an eye for the industry, and with a background in music, how did you decide to go towards the theme park themed entertainment space?
Yeah, absolutely. So back, when was it? Maybe 2014, Clay. I got my first taste of the entertainment industry. So at this point, I'd been going to college and master's degree and been heavily involved in the marching arts and really involved in the music world in terms of playing with orchestras, and just the professional performance world was really kind of my thing. I got a chance to work with Busch Gardens. I had a great friend there that invited me out to be a part of this show that they were revamping called Mix It Up. And that was kind of really my first taste getting thrown into that atmosphere. And I feel like it was such a, just full of energy kind of experience. It just was so, for me, exhilarating to be a part of that and to get a chance to kind of creatively work through these things with performances in the professional setting in terms of orchestra and those types of settings, or in the marching arts. There are a lot of parameters that you kind of have to fall into. And with the theme park industry and specifically entertainment, I found that we were able to kind of let loose of those parameters a little bit and kind of really kind of do some things that you normally wouldn't think about doing. And so with Mix It Up, we had a chance to do the pots and pans routine that really kind of grew over that rehearsal process and install process. And with that was just like unlimited possibilities. So that really kind of started my brain going, okay, cool. Like this is like something I really enjoy and want to be a part of. And then I got to see the fans walking around and watching the show and the guests being really entertained by it. So I think that's like really what started this process for me. So like I said, my good friend, his name's Matt Hartwell, got a chance he just invited me to join on pretty late in the game, actually. And I just have loved it ever since. And here we are.
And Clay, what about you?
Yeah, so I studied music in college, did like the music education and percussion performance major track. And after graduating, it's really hard to become a classical percussionist. So an available job where I went to school is in Newport News, Christopher Newport University, and Busch Gardens is like a popular employer of students of CNU. So I started working as a musician, performing musician for them. And that was like 2013. And then after a year of doing shows for them, they were revamping Mix It Up, like Justin said, and they were doing it in more of like a drum corps style. So I had actually done drum corps in college. And so it really worked out of like having this past experience of doing the show that was more just entertainment based, less like of the precision movement sound quality that drum corps has. And so then Matt Harwell, Justin, they were like, oh, this guy did the show before and he has drum corps experience. Let's ask him to do the show again. So then I went back to Busch Gardens and I just was performing for a number of years and realized that the part that I loved the most was the rehearsal process and the collaborative process. And each year as I performed more and more, I started like losing the magic of the like performance, because once the directors leave, the show is just copy paste. Like you need to provide the same level of quality and with that the same experience for each audience, because you never know if it's the only time someone's going to see a show. So it's the performer's job in a like theme park and cruise ship setting to just be super consistent, and sometimes that gets a little dry, if you can imagine. So yeah, I like my passion started developing for the creative process, which only lasted up to like 2 weeks. So then I had a conversation with Justin during one contract where I was like, hey, I'm having a great time collaborating with you, and I'm curious if you're interested in doing this for other clients, like reaching out to other parks. And he was like, oh, funny you should ask, because I'm absolutely interested in doing that. So that's when we kind of partnered up. That was like 2016-ish.
Got it. Yeah, I have, it would have been 2017 or 2018, I believe. I saw Mix It Up, and I had no idea what it was going in. I knew very, like, tangentially that you guys had a hand in it, but I saw that show, and it is one of the craziest, most energetic theme park shows I've ever seen. And obviously, Busch Gardens is a park that is known for their entertainment and their shows. Obviously, shows like Celtic Fire, Mix It Up, even stuff like Monster Stomp during Halloween. So I love that show. It's really cool knowing that you guys kind of just were brought in as a kind of a revamp of that show, and that's kind of how you got your start. Justin, I know you're in the Asheville, North Carolina area, and I'm going to ask the most niche North Carolina question for a podcast with a kind of a, I guess, somewhat global audience. But have you ever done the drum circle on Friday nights in Asheville?
Yes, I have. So, I get that question a lot, actually. It does get some hype for sure around the area. People, at least in North Carolina, kind of associate the Asheville scene with the hippie kind of drum circle vibe. You have to understand that I studied, a lot of world percussion, global percussion in my degrees. And so I was expecting a little bit something different in terms of that, but the atmosphere was really cool. A lot of people just kind of letting loose and having fun, and a lot of people that, don't really play drums or instruments, just kind of having a good time. So that kind of vibe was really awesome. But, I was kind of looking for something that was a little bit more like traditional world drumming, drum circle based, something that you might see in West Africa. But there are some people that are involved with that are really legit players that are phenomenal to watch play, but not really kind of my cup of tea. So I've done it like once or twice, but it's been a while.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I definitely want to get into some of the productions you guys have done in the past, but I would be remiss if I didn't talk about arguably the most important theme song on a roller coaster podcast there is, the Coaster101 podcast theme song that you guys put together.
Yeah.
Obviously I came to you and I, obviously had known your work from the theme park space, and I knew kind of what we were looking for. But what was kind of the process when it went into creating just a quick, 30, 40 second just loop theme song that we play at the beginning and end of every show?
Yeah, absolutely. With any project, honestly, we always kind of look at all the parameters and all the knowledge that we have of that subject, whatever it may be, whoever's coming to us with an idea. So you said, we're Coaster101. We want to do a podcast intro. So immediately the first thing I started thinking about was coasters. I know I've read a lot of your guys' articles and kind of keep up with you on social media. So that fun atmosphere, that atmosphere of just going to a theme park to have a good time, let off some steam, ride some sweet coasters, eat some good food, watch some great entertainment. So for me, and when I was talking to Clay about it, was like, hey, we got this great opportunity to kind of provide a little intro for them. The first thing we talked about was like, it's got to be fun, like it's got to be really fun. So a lot of what we do is themed pretty much anything. It doesn't, not just necessarily music, but the storyline and the ideas behind it. So I knew that we kind of wanted to map out something that had those thematic elements within the music. I could easily just give you any kind of rockin' song and you could throw it in the front of your intro and it probably would work well. But I thought what would be really unique for you guys is to have some of that theme park soundtrack in it. So, the kids screaming at the beginning, the chain as the roller coaster goes up the incline and all those fun things.
Awesome. That's, again, I love it. I'm very excited anytime I put it in the front of the show. And I appreciate I'm going to go ahead and just say it now. We're going to play the full version of the song at the beginning of the show. You probably have heard the full version, and then we'll play the full version at the very end. So typically we kind of fade it in, but with our special guest today, we're going to give you the full, unedited, amazing, awesome, raw version. So,
thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you guys again for doing that. It was a huge help to us, and it's been obviously it's something that sets us apart from a lot of other podcasts out there. So I really do appreciate it.
Oh, absolutely. We had a blast.
Let's get into your professional work that you've been paid for. I'm not...
No, it's still great. We like to help out any time we can. So
perfect. But you guys mentioned Mix It Up, but what are some of the other productions you guys have done kind of in that theme park specific space?
Yeah, sure. Maybe I'll let Clay talk a little bit. I feel like I'm talking a lot. You want to run down some of our shows that we've had fun with?
Yeah, for sure. So same park, Busch Gardens, notable shows, Monster Stomp. I think we mentioned it just for a second earlier, but that one got a lot of traction online because of the knife drumming routine, and it's a great portion of that show because it is it's kind of taken out of the show for a second in rehearsal process and just completely redone every year. So like every time you see Monster Stomp, every season you see it, it will be a different show because of that number, even if the rest of the show is the same. Just that's like a pretty amazing collaborative process for that. And who doesn't want to play with knives on a coffin, right? Yeah, but we've done for some other parks, we were asked to do a show revolving around like a brewery festival. So we had a lot of fun making Brew Beatz, which is 4 drummers with like this micro brew setting. So also like it's another situation of like, what elements would you want to see in a show if you were at a beer fest, like a beer festival? So it's just really fun to wrap our minds around that because we both love beer. So it's like naturally very fun to create. And along those lines, we've also been asked to make a painting show called Sticky Paint. It's super family friendly and very interactive, with kids being able to come up and paint throughout the show, making this like big masterpiece. But it also combines like classical music arrangements with painting, so it's a full like art dive in there. And Justin just opened a Mardi Gras themed show, which is pretty cool. If you want to talk about that, Justin.
Yeah, so going back to Busch Gardens, but before that, I would love to just say that the Brew Beat show was really our first full top to bottom production install, which was really exciting. So everything top to bottom we provided and basically delivered that show to Carowinds. And I have to thank Ryan Allen and the entertainment team at Carowinds for giving us that opportunity, because he saw the vision and what we were trying to do and invited us out for that festival. And that really kind of kickstarted a whole different side of the company, which was really exciting for us. And from there has grown. And with that, a lot of these shows are very like themed. So like our thing is, okay, Brew Beatz was about brewery. So like it's about that type of equipment and environment. So we didn't want to have like just a regular drum out there for certain aspects of the show. So everything was Brew themed equipment. And then we just learned how to play on those and use those. Another thing we like to provide with our shows are the backing tracks, a lot of sweetener tracks that really provide, keeps the show flowing through so that we can have some comedic bits. We can have time to interact with the audience, feel like we can step away from our instruments, our live instruments at times, and come back. So that kind of
plus like 20 minutes of drums is a lot. Even if you think you want to sit down and watch 20 minutes of drums, you get through 4 minutes of it and you're like, oh, right. Okay.
Right.
So Justin's work with composing original backing tracks helps the audience out a lot, even if they don't realize it.
Right.
Yeah.
And, we kind of transitioned into some authentic, like strolling shows that are organic and don't have backing track with them. So one of them you just brought up was the Mardi Gras show that we just did for Busch Gardens, and it was pure energy. But the difference with that is they get to travel around the park. So I feel like that kind of breaks up the process, and it keeps it moving, keeps it energized. So if we have the opportunity with a stage show, we like to really incorporate the backing track with that. And so another notable one is Busker Jam, which I think, Andrew, you got to see that some. And, that was a chance to kind of mix in other instrumentalists, not just percussionists. So that was a really great experience for us. And with that, again, keeping like that thematic storyline, but there's always kind of like a backing track to keep it flowing and moving so that it stays fresh for the audience. So,
and Busker Jam was really great for us to do because it took us out of the box. We kind of were experiencing this being boxed into just doing drum shows because we both have described our experience. We are trained percussionists, so the drumming shows come naturally to us, right? Like we can just improv some beats for you, but it goes much further past that. So Busker Jam was a great opportunity to show like, here's a banjo player, here's a bass player. Like, let's do some like band tunes as well as these like really themed percussive elements. And then we actually had a show for Carowinds right before the pandemic hit. That was a full on cover band. So that was a great experience too, that hopefully we can bring out shortly.
Right. The show that never was for right now.
There's some rehearsal footage, but nothing we can put out there.
We did get through the rehearsal process, but yeah.
It's all good. Yeah, you guys mentioned, I think it was Brew Beatz actually, where I actually officially kind of got acquainted with the JM music design company, just because I was looking for it on Instagram. I might have been one of the only people at the Great Carolina Fest who was like, I want to see this show. I want to sit here and I'm watching this show and I'm watching the four drummers. They're drumming on barrels, and then Nate comes out and he's like juggling pint glasses, and I'm like, this show is great. How is this happening? And then, same thing with Busker Jam. I mean, you've got your banjo player and your bass player, but then you've got, I don't know the percussionist name, but the guy's name was Cletus in the show, and he's like playing the xylophone on the interior of an old truck. So it's, I mean, that was I loved Busker Jam in 2019. It really fit in well with that whole Copperhead strike.
Absolutely.
Not county fair, but the surrounding area. So and then some other works you guys did for Carowinds. You mentioned the sticky paint. You guys did the drumline show during Scarowinds, or it was during
the Pumpkin Fest.
Yep, the Great Pumpkin Fest. So, but you did touch on the your shows that never were, as it was.
Well, we hope that they will be. It's just when the time's right. But there was two shows that we were putting up. One was like an edutainment show, so education, a little show for the STEM kind of environment where they bring. Carowinds has a program where they invite people to their schools, to their park, to kind of learn through that, which was going to be a really fun experience. But we'll have to table that until times are moved past the COVID environment. So
got it. Well, I want to talk a little bit about, I don't want you to give away all your trade secrets, but I do want to talk kind of about the whole creative process, about what goes into a theme park show. I mean, is it basically Carowinds, for example? Does somebody like Ryan come to you with an idea, or does he have an idea that's like, hey, I want to do this show about beer. What can you guys do? What can you put together? Or is it something you guys connect with him and say, hey, we've got this show we can do. We've got this idea. We think it would work well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very curious at the whole like third party music process here and how
Absolutely.
this works.
Well, it's always something new, which is exciting. And with that it's a little bit of both. And sometimes it's one way, like we'll present an idea, or it's the other way around. And it's mostly that way with any client that we have, where
Mm-hmm.
it may be we have a specific idea that we think would work for your festival, or we've done it before. Here's a show that we could remount for you, that we have in our portfolio. Or it could be someone coming to us and say, we want this, like this just happened with Busch Gardens. They reached out, said, we're doing the Mardi Gras festival. What can you do for us? And so we have a little bit of both. So we always kind of split up our time between always developing new concepts that we just have in our back pocket, if you know what I mean. That we have like concepts and briefs worked up for that we can pitch if the time is right. But we also really enjoy I think Clay mentioned it earlier, the collaboration process. So anytime that someone comes to us, and just like your podcast intro, that just out of nowhere, someone says, hey, we would like something like this. Can you do that for us? And that's always a fun experience too. So it's a little bit of both. And kind of depends on the need and the client, I would say.
It is also very much, I think this is kind of similar to every professional environment, but it's about getting into the door. And then once you're there, there's a lot of like just casual conversation around like a future festival or next core season, that kind of thing. So with basically each client that we've gotten, it's been an element of like, we've had something that they were interested in, provided that product. And then from there, like at the end of a rehearsal process for show one, right, it's like, hey, we're also thinking about doing this kids festival. Is there anything you could do about like paint? And then the wheels start turning, like it's like, once you're there, then you can just start collaborating with that entertainment office.
And you guys together kind of as a creative collective, I guess would be the best way to put it. When a park or there's an idea, how is the creative process between the two of you? Are you guys just constantly pinging ideas off one another where it's like, hey, I like the way this sounds. What do you think? Et cetera,
yeah, absolutely. Et cetera. It is a lot of back and forth. We do have an official process when someone brings something to us, but for example, just the other day, or maybe even last night, I just sent Clay like a text message. It was like, check this out. Future idea that we could save it to the bank. It could be like a fun thing to take and explore with a show when the time is right. So we're always collecting ideas and between the two of us, and in terms of that, developing concepts as well. So like I said, we kind of have like a catalog of concepts that we would love to have the opportunity to produce at one point in the future. In terms of when someone brings a project to us, the first thing we do is sit down with and completely erase our minds with any parameters or anything. It's just like, what can we do to give a top to bottom product that is unlike something that is out there currently? Because we want our brand to kind of be associated with things that aren't being done. So for instance, we could have easily done a drumline show, but Carowinds was interested in adding dancers, and so we just took it and ran with it. And how much can we add to this to just really make it unique and stand out from other things that are being done out there in the entertainment world? And sometimes you can do that. Sometimes you have to, kind of align with things that are being done in the industry. But I think we just enjoy like, how much can we add to this that is just like so different or unique? I think that's like our starting point, is really no parameters and just brainstorming and just going for it.
Yeah. And like with the parameters thing, it's about like stripping down what you may think that show would be and replacing it with what the park or client like needs, like doing as much education on the festival or the area that we're going to be putting it up in. And that way you're getting away of having this like, oh, isn't this just Stomp? Right? Like, we don't want people to watch our show and think that, right? It's going to be this thing of like, oh my gosh, how did they make this show with this truck next to this roller coaster? Like, this is, it should just be something that you think could only live in that area. That's like how we like to theme our shows. And as far as the collaboration, like, I think what works really well is Justin crushes on like the composition side of things, along with, owning the business. So there's all of that. But as far as like actually starting the creative process, we like to look at like, what do we want the show to be called? Because that can spark a lot of ideas, which is really fun. And then Justin will start just brainstorming with some music. He'll send that over constantly and just be like, what do you think of this? And I'll be like, oh, maybe the bass could be something a little more percussive. Maybe we could have that trumpet line like hang over a little bit, right? Like feedback along the way. And then I'll be developing like what we call a show flow, like what we think like some script points could be to motivate going from movement to movement throughout the show. Keep it interesting.
Got it. Yeah, you both have this creative, I can tell just by talking to you, you have this creative like gene in your head that I don't have. And so I'm listening to you and I'm like, this makes so much sense, but I could never process it. So I'm just, it's thrilling to hear it discussed. But
absolutely.
If anybody's like seen your shows in the past, that you guys have you do a constant audition stream, but there are performers who are performed in, multiple versions of your shows. Do you guys have just like a creative roster of talent who can work in a theme park setting and works well with others and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we keep a running list of people that have been in shows before and people that have submitted. And even though maybe it wasn't the right time for them for that particular contract, we always kind of come back to them for future projects or things. If they've been in the show before and we're going to remount that show, that we like to try to keep the cast, because it only keeps getting better from that point. If you've done the show 3 or 4 times for 3 or 4 different contracts, then it just becomes natural to those individuals. So we do like to kind of keep it in, keep the team together if we can. But at times, we need to explore new opportunities as well. And we're always looking for great talent to do that with.
The profession itself is so odd and it's so little known. Like, I grew up in Virginia, went to Busch Gardens all the time, never saw Mix It Up. And it had been there for years, like as I was going to the park. So it's not something that's like advertised of like, are you a musician? You can do performing like after you're done with school, right? It's like not a thing. So there is a lot of talent out there that maybe they've just done drum corps, maybe they have a degree in music now and are just out in the world. So it's interesting. Some people just like stumble upon it and then all of a sudden now they're on a roster of people that we can contact to perform.
Right.
So yeah.
And people move on to
people.
I mean, just like kind of Clay talked about earlier, like theme park shows are really intensive. And so some people decide that after 3 or 4 years of a summer contract that maybe it's time to switch gears and do something else. And that's fine too. So it's a constant flow of new people and old people cycling through our shows, which we enjoy because, it's nice to get new people in as well. But we do like to retain kind of people that have been with us for a long time as well.
Got it. And you guys have a roster. I mean, you got people all over the country basically at this point, right?
Yeah. Are you talking about within our
your performing roster?
Yeah, all over the place. Yeah, which is exciting. And people, relocate and move, and we always try to make it work. But some things are more regional. So someone just wants to do a show at Carowinds because they're in that area and they don't really want to move or anything like that, or relocate for a contract. But some people are willing to move around and actually enjoy that. So that's good too.
Once you have your cast and once you have your music, I mean, what is the audition and rehearsal process like? I mean, are you just, I don't want to use the phrase beating it into their heads like a drum, but is it just like a couple of weeks of just intense, just line by line by line by line in the show and until they know it? Or, I mean, again, how does that whole process work?
Yeah, well, what's nice about most of our cast when it comes to that time is that they are professionals. So they usually do some prep work. We work really hard to try and get materials, script points, music into their hands before they arrive, because any kind of prep they can do, sometimes it's a quick turnaround. We might have 5 days of rehearsal. We might have 8 days, or we can have 16. It just depends on budget and the kind of what's around that environment at that time. Like if we're coming out of summer into fall, it might be a quicker turnaround. So, yeah, I mean, we like to divide up our kind of rehearsals between learning the music, which is a key part to our shows. Script points is part of that. But then we also have staging, and we have those like logistics in terms of like where we actually perform at that we have to go through and map that out. So there'll be time away from their instruments when we can kind of do that and just kind of work through that process. And then we'll get to a point where we tech and we go into making sure that if we're using audio with ears and microphones, that all that's working appropriately. If there's lights, to coordinate, making sure that that's syncing up. And then we like to try to have like a preview day before the day we open, where we just run shows all day long and get notes from the entertainment team and all that fun stuff.
And then with this process, I mean, have you ever like created a show, created a script, created the music for it, and then something happens in a show that you guys like change on the fly, or is it pretty regimented?
No, absolutely.
That totally happens. Yeah. Basically every time.
Yeah. I mean, we like to try to get it right, but if we're not going to open a show if it's not something that we're happy with, and certainly something that our clients and entertainment staffs aren't happy with. So there is constant reworking. I mean, Clay and I have been up very late during the rehearsal process, tweaking and fixing or completely re-scrapping an idea and redoing it. We've never had to do like an entire show. That would be, I think, near impossible, but there's always some things that aren't working the way you would want. And you just got to be reactive. You got to know and go into that process knowing that everything's not going to be completely worked out, and that there will be some reworkshopping throughout the rehearsal process.
Got it. You guys have any like memories that stand out from any past shows that the two of you have worked on? Just if there's something either for, a funny reason or a notable reason, just something that really sticks out in your mind about a show you've created and produced.
Well, with that topic of staying up late and having to work on something on the fly with Brew Beatz, when we opened that, we had to like theme every element. And so we wanted to like put the Brew Beatz logo. We got like a stencil that we made for that show, and we were just like putting it on everything. But the only time we could do that was when the park was closed. And that's the only time we could rehearse. So like the rehearsal was going into the night, and then all of the work that we needed to do to theme the set had to be after that rehearsal. So there was one time we were up at like 4 a.m. spray painting in the midway in front of the food hall at Carowinds. Yep. And we were just freaking out that we would accidentally spray paint the brick pavement.
Right, so be super careful with everything.
And it was like, what are we doing? It's just this element of like, it's 4 a.m. and we're spray painting a sidewalk, or trying to not spray paint a sidewalk.
We did not spray paint the sidewalk.
We did not.
So we're clear.
To clarify.
But yeah, I mean, there's always that kind of fun stuff. I had a great memory with the Monster Stomp show. The first year I was doing it was a really intensive project and a lot of elements in that show. And I think the show director at that time called me and said, we're going to get rid of this idea and we need to do this. And we got to do it tomorrow. And this was like late at night. So like I stayed up late, kind of like designing the idea or whatever. I walked in the next day. I think Clay was in the cast at that point. It was like, all right, so this is what's going to happen today. We're doing this. It is going to happen. It's going to work out, and just kind of
like our brains were like completely swollen with information, right? Because this is a brand new show. So it's not like a remount where you already know the majority of the show and you're just changing one element. This is like our brains were just completely saturated. And then Justin just calls us to the front of the stage and it's like, all right, forget that. And now everyone just bear with me, and we're going to learn this right now. And then we're going to perform it to the best of our
Right.
ability for this entire
Right.
entertainment office that's standing behind me right now.
Yes.
And we were like, okay, here we go.
Yeah. So there's, you know, some stressful times, but they always work out if you have the right mentality going into it. And like I said, that cast was phenomenal. So they were like, you got it. Like, we're going to do it, you know? So those are some memorable moments. I think opening the Brew Beatz show for us was a big deal. And, you know, seeing the crowd really interact and like just loving it. And like, you know, there's that whole bit, there's some comedy in that show where the MC kind of goes back and forth with the audience, and seeing people really like enjoy that. And while they're drinking a beer, like that's exactly what we envisioned and what we wanted. And again, so thankful that Carowinds gave us that opportunity. So it was just some really great experiences with that.
Yeah. You guys, I mean, you mentioned briefly kind of the stressful aspect, and then, you know, the late nights of tagging the barrels and Carowinds at 4 a.m. But, you know, when creating a theme park show, what is the most challenging aspect of it?
That's a great one.
I think just trying to predict how the audience will perceive something. Because like, and I think this goes across multiple professions, but when you have your eyes on something for so long, you kind of get a bit of a tunnel vision, right? Like, and so trying to take a step back constantly to think like, okay, wait, is this actually entertaining? Or am I way too hung up on the theme, for example, or like the one measure of music that I want to be perfect? Like, what is the overall concept? Is someone going to walk past this, look at it, and be like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to sit down and watch this"? Because you can't know until we do like that preview, and even the preview a lot of times is for entertainment professionals who already understand that this is supposed to be a show. But what's important is people who come for the roller coasters or the food. Are they going to see this as entertaining? So that's probably the biggest like nail biter for opening day. It's like, all right, does this all work, or do we have to like redo this in a day?
Yeah, and I don't think I could said it any better, Clay. And with that, you just have to be prepared. If something's not quite right, then you know there is time to do some adjustments. But usually, I think the biggest thing is what are the guests going to really enjoy and take away from the show.
Yeah, I'm Clay, I fall into that category of people who come to the park mainly for roller coasters, with this being the Coaster101 podcast and the website right for being Coaster101. But with that, I mean, I've taken more time now because I'm in the parks so much to make a point to see the shows, just because I know the talent in the show is top notch, and I know the production value, especially at the regional parks, has really just increased over the years. So I try to make it a point to tell people if they go to a park, take time to see at least one show, because you will enjoy it. And it's people who are professionals in their craft, who are going to entertain you for somewhere between 15 to 25 minutes and just, you know, captivate your attention for that. So I completely agree where you're coming from, and I understand that it's a challenge. I would tell anybody listening or anybody I talk to, if you go to a park, take time to see a show. I mean, if it's a show you guys design, great. If it's a show somebody else designs,
absolutely,
also great. I mean, just take time to experience the shows. It's, you know, entertainers, they are going to be entertaining, and they're doing it for you, the paying guest. So that's my my sales pitch for anybody listening to, you know, take a break from a roller coaster. We all love roller coasters, but go see a show at a theme park.
That's so great. I appreciate that.
On the flip side, though, you know, we talked about the challenging aspect. What is the most rewarding aspect for you guys? And I think I might know the answer, but go ahead with it.
Well, I would say the reward is also knowing that challenge that we just spoke about actually worked, and it drew the crowd, and you can see the crowd like sitting there really enjoying the show, really kind of just really into it. That for me is like there's no other feeling than to see that like accomplishment. Not only did like the cast do their job and really make it through the rehearsal process and make that an enjoyable experience, and all the elements coming together, I think is just like the best feeling. I can't, you know, describe it better than it's just like watching a baby being born. It's kind of like you see this dream, you see this vision, you put all this time and effort into it, months of preparation, and then here it is on opening day. And then you see like people like bobbing their heads or like laughing or getting their cameras out, taking pictures and taking little video clips. Like that's always the best. I think that's the highlight for me.
Yeah, I can remember a specific time and this was watching Busker Jam on opening day and having two teenagers. We were like filming it from way back in the back of the audience, and these like two teenagers walk up and watch the last number and then look at each other and they go like, "That's badass." And it's like, wow, that's like,
yeah,
that's praise that I never thought I'd ever get, especially from a teenager. And like, that's like a theme park show, right? And that's not how people typically describe theme park shows. There's like such a genuine reaction. It's like, oh yeah, that's what's up.
Yeah. That was a great feeling.
And then for me, another thing as a previous like performer of these kinds of shows, having the casts be like, being like satisfied with the content of the show. Cause it's really easy to like just copy and paste an entire movement just for the sake of having content. Right.
Right.
Like you could just have them play like bucket to bucket to bucket to bucket to bucket bucket pop over and over again. And like I've done shows that have that, and you're like falling asleep as a performer, and your job is to be like engaging, right? So having it be complicated enough to where the performers are interested, but they're not like in pain because it's so complicated. At the end of a rehearsal process, having performers be like, "This is a good show. Like I'm excited to perform this for 2, 3, 4 months."
I love it. Well, as I mentioned at the top of the show, we are inching ever so closely to the 2021 regional park season. I'm not asking you to tell me the name of the show and the theme and everything that's going to happen and every comedy bit. But if people were looking to see a JMMD production at a theme park this upcoming season, where are you guys going to be? And if there's anything you're allowed or able to tell us about the show, what can you tell us? Where can we find JM Music Design in the 2021 theme park midways?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in terms of theme parks, we have recently announced that we're opening a new show at Valley Fair, which we're really excited about, which is in Minnesota.
Yep.
So if you're looking to get out of North Carolina and take a little trip, you can head on up to Valley Fair. And that show is going to be really fun. Like I said, we can't disclose the show details, but
of course
it will be high energy. There'll be some participation from the audience that is COVID safe. And we'll also have, our typical kind of MC scripting points throughout to just kind of keep the show flowing throughout. So we're really excited about that. We do have a lot of irons in the fire for the fall, which we're excited about with haunt concepts. That's something that we've been exploring a lot recently, is haunt concepts, and hopefully by that time the pandemic will be mostly gone. I certainly hope so. We'll be kind of closely back to somewhat normal atmosphere for the theme park, and so we've been putting a lot of energy into that. Outside of the theme park, we have an opportunity to do something really unique with the Lost Colony show, which is in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And ironically enough, the show director that I worked on with Monster Stomp brought us in. He's the show director for this one, and he brought us in to add some elements to this show, which will be really fun to see. Kind of, if you want to put a little bit of that like mix it up mentality that you've seen before with the drum corps aspect of it into this show. But that show has been around for a really long time, and they're revamping it to add some new elements, and one of those is some drum corps moments throughout. So we're very excited about that opportunity as well.
Wonderful. That's awesome. And where else can people find you guys? Obviously, you're on the web at jmmusicdesign.com, but as far as social media, where can the folks find you?
Yeah, so we have a Facebook page. So Facebook, Instagram, we're on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn. So if you just do the old @JM Music Design, in the search fields, you should be able to find us everywhere with that. And anywhere else, Clay? I can't think. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay. And I've got one last question that I didn't include in our rundown. If you guys could provide one piece of advice for anybody looking to become a theme park or themed entertainment musician or show producer, what piece of advice would you give them?
So that's a nice one. Let me think.
Well, we're doing auditions, so audition now. If you want to perform.
Yeah.
If you're going to be a producer, my recommendation is just to talk to the closest person or the person you would be most excited to work with, because it takes a lot of collaboration from the ground. That's like, I was like super nervous before I asked Justin about working outside of our like contracts that we were doing together. So
yeah,
it just takes kind of that leap, but that as long as you know that you want to create and collaborate for a career, then it's going to be worth it.
Yeah. I would say also the creative aspect is highly involved in the ability to take something that's, you have no idea what someone's going to talk to you about and run with it and really turn it into something. So having a creative process that you're familiar with, or having a creative mind, I think is really important for this job. The other side of that is the collaboration process. So you can't be so set on your ways that you can't see the visions of others and be willing to adjust your creative process to fit the needs of others. I mean, we constantly do edits and drafts for approval, and sometimes the way we see it isn't always how the client or the entertainment team sees it, and then we have to go back to the drawing board and we have to adjust that. And I think that process, you have to be willing to accept that and be excited about it. Honestly, I mean, like I like to get notes. I like to get feedback on what we've come up with. And I think the more people, the better. I'm always had that mentality. The more creative minds, the better. So I think that would be my big advice.
Awesome. Well, guys, I really appreciate your time today. This has been a blast. Again, your big brain creativity here that I can't really even comprehend is fantastic. And my recommendation to anybody, again, listening, if you're at a theme park this season, take 15, take 20, take 25 minutes, go see a show. The work that goes into them is well worth it. You will leave entertained. And honestly, if you could take 15 minutes and take a break from riding a roller coaster, I'm sure your body would probably thank you as well.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Thanks again, Justin and Clay, for your time. That's going to do it for this episode of the Coaster 101 podcast.
Great. Thank you, Andrew.
As always, we are at Coaster 101 on all forms of social media, and we also have a website where there's some really good articles that Justin has commented that he's read and enjoyed. So that was very nice of him. We're Coaster101.com. If you've got any questions, comments, concerns, fan mail, hate mail, or just want to tell us how much you love the theme music to this podcast, you can send us an email at podcast@Coaster101.com. Wherever you're listening, make sure you subscribe, rate, review, and all of those other podcast buzzwords to help other people find the show. We would really appreciate it. Thanks, as always, to the great folks, Justin and Clay at JM Music Design, for our theme music. That'll do it for this week's show, and we will talk to y'all again soon. See ya.